Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to do another video on today is the 42nd anniversary of the birth of Hulkamania, at least in the WWE, right? Because, and I never really did a video on the birth of Hulkamania in the WWE because, well, Hulk Hogan was still alive. But this is the first year ever that Hulk Hogan is no longer with us, so let's discuss his legacy. Hulk Hogan arrived in the WWE for the second time on January the, well, he arrived a little bit earlier than that, but January the 23rd, 1984 was when he won the championship. He arrived a couple of weeks before that. He made the save for then WWF champion Bob Backlund against the Wild Samoans. Now, and this was significant because Backlund was the number one babyface in the company and had been the number one babyface in the company since winning the WWF Championship from superstar Billy Graham himself in 1978. And Hulk Hogan was, when he was in the territory before, from 1979 to 80, he was a heel. You know what I mean? So basically they had to reestablish his, at least what's going on, they had to reestablish his reputation in the company, you know, once again, as a good guy, as a babyface, right? So who better than the top babyface of the company to say, put him over and say, look, Hulk Hogan changed his ways. He's no longer with classy Freddie Blassie, who was a notorious heel manager in the New York area. He's now a good guy. So what ends up happening is in 1983, of course, in December of 83, Bob Backlund loses the WWF Championship to the Iron Sheik. Backlund then gets injured and cannot revoke his rematch clause, so Hulk Hogan steps in to take his place. And from there, Hulk Hogan beats the Iron Sheik with a leg drop and becomes the champion and remains the champion for 4 years until 1988. Now, what is Hulkamania? You know, what was that? Was that born in the WWF? No, that was born in the AWA. Because Hulk Hogan, like I said, he was from 1978 to 1980. He was in he was in the WWF. But in 1982, he got an offer from Sylvester Stallone to do Rocky 3 and to play the role of Thunderlips. And Vince McMahon Sr. said, listen, if you're going to do a movie, you can't be a wrestler here. You cannot wrestle in the New York City area. Hey, what's up, Tommy? You cannot wrestle in the New York City area. If the New York area, the Northeast, the promotion WWF, if you're going to be a movie star. So you're out of here. So Hogan then goes to Minneapolis, Minnesota, Verne Gagne's territory. And initially, they have him as a heel. I'm good, thank you. They have him as a heel. His back is to the camera, right? They're introducing him from both California and New York. And his promo style is very much like Superstar Billy Graham, right? Superstar Billy Graham had been in the AWA area in the mid-70s, you know what I mean? And Jesse Ventura was already there, right? So, but something is happening. Due to the success of the movie and his cameo in it, he's becoming more popular. Also, with something was happening in the AWA. AWA was known for having two primary baby faces that were big stars in the area. One was the Crusher, and the other was Dick the Bruiser. The Crusher was from one of the main cities, Milwaukee, and Dick the Bruiser was from Indiana, of course. You know, Indianapolis, like that was his city. Milwaukee was the Crusher, and Indianapolis was Dick the Bruiser. But the Crusher took off every summer, so they need another baby face. So what ends up happening is Hulk Hogan is already getting these reactions, from the fans. So they end up turning him babyface, right, by having him go against Jerry Blackwell as the heel. Jerry Blackwell was doing the Iraqi sympathizer, or the Middle Eastern sympathizer gimmick, before Sergeant Slaughter. He was Sheikh Jerry Blackwell, right, with Sheikh Adnan Al-Kaisi, right, and Hogan ends up going against him and saving the baby faces, so that turns Hogan babyface, because they want to put him with Johnny Valiant as his manager in the AWA. Well, that was his manager initially, because he had a manager in New York. He had Fred Blassie as a manager in New York, right? So he gets over big time, and they start doing Hulkamania. He starts selling merchandise, and he gets over big time in Japan. The whole Ichiban chant, which Ichiban in Japanese means number one. He becomes a semi-finalist in the first tournament for the IWGP Championship in New Japan, in Inoki's promotion. So he's big in both places, in Minneapolis as well as in Japan. So, but Verne Gagne wants a piece of his Japan money as well as a piece of his merchandise. I will, Lisa. Thank you. And Hogan's not doing it. Hogan is not giving up his merchandise, and he's not giving up his Japan money, a piece of his Japan deal. Because another part of it too was that Verne Gagne had a deal with Giant Baba, which in Japan there are two primary wrestling organizations: All Japan Pro Wrestling, founded by Giant Baba, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, founded by Antonio Inoki. And Verne Gagne had the deal with All Japan, but Hogan's deal with New Japan goes back to when he was in WWF. So he doesn't want to leave New Japan to go to All Japan either. He basically doesn't want Verne Gagne to control him. So Verne is having him in the feud with Nick Bockwinkel, who's the champion at that time, managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan. And in Super Sunday, which was the big super show in 1983 that Verne Gagne had, which was his concept, like a big Super Bowl of wrestling, like this Super Bowl of wrestling closed circuit type shows. He has a match with Nick Bockwinkel, and he beats Nick Bockwinkel, but he threw Nick Bockwinkel over the top rope. So the AWA, much like the NWA, that's a disqualification. So the on-camera commissioner, Stanley Blackburn, in the AWA, reverses the decision. Right, Lord James Blears was the referee. Lord James Blears from Hawaii. He reverses the decision, and Hogan thinks he won, but he didn't. And Verne didn't want to put the belt on him. So finally, while Hogan's over there in Japan touring, he sends Verne Gagne a fax. Says, "Listen, I'm leaving. I'm going to New York because Vince McMahon Jr. has just purchased, 2 years before that, the WWF from his father and the other, the other shareholders, because there were several shareholders in Capital Sports, which was the old parent organization before Titan and before WWFE, and before TKO, obviously, of the WWE, right? Right, and it was Gorilla Monsoon, Arnold Scullin, Phil Zacco, and Vince McMahon Sr. It was split several directions, and Willie Gilzenberg, who was the first on-screen president of the WWF, back in the 60s and 70s. Right, so um, Vince Kennedy McMahon, buys the promotion from those guys, right, including his dad, and he wants to take the thing national. And he has seen the effect that Hulk Hogan, because of the Rocky movie, and because of his popularity in AWA, has had on the fans. So he wants to bring him in. So he tells him to no-show Verne Gagne. So Hulk Hogan basically fucks Verne Gagne. He fucks Verne Gagne, and he goes to New York. And under under the condition that when he gets to New York, he will win the championship. And this is what he did. You know what I mean? This was kind of like Bruno. Bruno did the exact same thing. Bruno was in the WWF. No, he was, pardon me, he was in Capital Wrestling Corporation before it was the WWF in 1960. And he then left. He left the promotion because he had a falling out with Vince Sr. and he sided in a promotional war over the New York City area with another promoter, Colo Coriani. So Vince Sr. blackballed him to all the promotions in the United States, and he had to go to Frank Tunney's promotion in Toronto to work. He couldn't go anywhere, Bruno. But then eventually comes back in 1963 under the conditions that when he comes back, he will win the championship from the then champion Buddy Rogers. So it was the same thing with Hogan. He's coming back and he's making an immediate splash, signaling a new era in the promotion's history. Now, Verne Gagne trained the Iron Sheik. He brought the Iron Sheik into professional wrestling. The Iron Sheik, of course, was in the 1968 Olympics, coaching the Olympic wrestling team, coming to the United States, from Iran. And Verne Gagne broke him in as Khosrow Vaziri. And he taught him how to be a professional wrestler. And for a while, Verne Gagne's training camp, that a lot of people came out of that training camp, including Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, and others. Khosrow Vaziri, Iron Sheik, was his coach, his policeman, because Khosrow was a shooter, right? It was an amateur wrestler. He wrestled in his home country of Iran as well as here in the United States, right? So Verne Gagne was going to pay him money allegedly to injure Hulk Hogan and take out Hulk Hogan's leg and basically ruin the run. He didn't do it, right? He said no to it, and he puts him over cleanly. Now, allegedly, Bob Backlund, who was the former champion, had a problem with Hulk Hogan being the new champion because Bob Backlund, a young man from Princeton, Minnesota, right? He was a clean liver. He was an amateur wrestler himself, right? And he was the total opposite of Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan didn't have an amateur background. He didn't wrestle pretty much at all. He came from a rock star background. He was in a rock band in Tampa, Florida before breaking into the business and being broken into the business by Jack and Jerry Briscoe. And Hiro Matsuda was the trainer. Hiro Matsuda was the trainer in Florida, right? He didn't come from an amateur background. He was a showman type wrestler. You know what I mean? And that was another major reason why Verne Gagne didn't want to put the AWA championship on him either. because he didn't have an amateur background. Mostly the AWA championship got passed around between Verne Gagne himself and Nick Bockwinkel, guys that were with real wrestling pedigrees. And Hogan didn't have that. So that was one reason why Backlund had a problem with him becoming champion. The second reason was Hogan smoked marijuana, and Backlund felt that was unbecoming of a champion. You're talking about an organization that they only had a few champions up to that point. You know what I mean? They had Buddy Rogers, they had Bruno Sammartino, they had Ivan Koloff, they had Pedro Morales, they had Stan Stasiak, and superstar Billy Graham. You know, Bruno had such a long run with the belt, and Bruno was the clean cut guy back when they were all both of those two baby faces. They were clean cut guys, you know, like straight laced guys. Unlike Hogan, Hogan was a new type of baby face, right? But this was Vince Jr.'s vision. So Hogan wins the belt, and Gorilla Monsoon and Lord Alfred Hayes are on the call, and Gorilla Monsoon says, Hulkamania is here. And that was the beginning of Hulkamania in the WWF. And pretty soon they would do a tag team match, right? With George the Animal Steel and teaming with Mr. Fuji against Gene Okerlund and Hulk Hogan in Minneapolis. So they would go into Verne Gagne's territory with two stars, Verne Gagne's main announcer, which was Gene Okerlund, and his main wrestler, which was Hulk Hogan, to promote against Verne. you know what I mean? So they would do the same thing in St. Louis. St. Louis was different though because Sam Mushnick, who was the promoter in St. Louis, he didn't he didn't fight against Vince. He took the buyout. He was much like Stu Hart. Stu Hart did the same thing in Calgary. You know, he took the buyout. You know, Vince offered to everybody, to Verne Gagne, to the consortium in Georgia, to every basically promoter, every large promoter in the country. Some people took it, and others did not take it. You know what I mean? Fritz Von Erich didn't take it in Dallas. Bill Watts didn't take it in Louisiana. Eddie Graham went out of business because, well, he committed suicide. You know, he unalived himself. Pardon me. He unalived himself in 84, 85-ish. And the ones who took it was like Stu Hart. Frank Tunney died, so Frank Tunney passed away, so his nephew Jack took it in Toronto in Maple Leaf Wrestling. Don Owens eventually just went out of business. Jerry Jarrett was the last one standing, and he went out of business in 1997 with the Memphis territory, aka the USWA. But point being, Verne Gagne did not take Verne Gagne did not take it. He wanted to fight Vince, but he couldn't really fight him because he took his top heel in Dave Schultz, his top announcer in Gene Okerlund, his top heel manager in Bobby Heenan, and his top wrestler in Hulk Hogan. Luckily, the Road Warriors left Georgia and went to Minneapolis, kept the promotion alive for a couple more years. But that would pretty much spell the end of Verne Gagne. You know, Hulk Hogan put the death nail in Verne Gagne. And one of the biggest what ifs in wrestling history is, what if Hulk Hogan had stayed in Minneapolis and Verne Gagne had the ability and had the foresight to go national himself. You know what I mean? Because Verne Gagne had a stake in St. Louis. Verne Gagne had a huge territory. Verne Gagne's territory wasn't just Minneapolis. It was basically the entire Midwest,